Australia is the smallest continent and one of the largest countries in Earth, located between the Pacific and Indian Oceans. The capital of Australia is Canberra. Australia is one of the richest countries in Asia Pacific. Australia are popular with their mining and agriculture.
Australia is central bank is the Reserve Bank of Australia, and it will read as RBA throughout this report. RBA are acting on Reserve Bank Act 1959. RBA is on duty for the stability of the currency, full employment, and the economic prosperity and welfare of the Australian people.
Australia announced the monetary policy but appointed RBA control of the supply of money. Australia applies the quantitative instruments, achieve the goal of Australia economic policy. This scenario is called open market operations. This instrument is the most effective instrument of RBA to carry out the monetary policy.
Australia government does open market operations through the 5 aspects: price, quantity, demand, supply, and policy interest rate corridor.
Unemployment is a situation where labor force participants are available and willing to work but unable to find a job. The worldwide pandemic of COVID affected Australia with the type of cyclical unemployment. This occurs when there is a lack of job, resulting from a downsizing in business circle during this pandemic. All Australians in the age of 15 to 64 who are employed actively seeking employment are in a group of labor force. Student, housewife, pensioner, and discouraged workers are already excluded in the labor force. The labor force participant rate is the fraction of labor force to the total working age group population, which is expressed as a percentage. On record, the Australia unemployment rate peaked so high in July 2020 at 7.4%, and it is not a good situation for the Australia's economy. Unemployment does impact the Australians on individuals and society. The social problem resulting in the loss of income and self-respect, loss of job skills, and lastly, the crime rate at the country will high if employment is high. The federal government of Australia has come out with the biggest economic lifeline in Australia history, called the JobKeeper program. The government practiced expansionary fiscal policy through tax and public expenditure to control unemployment. Its main purpose is to maintain the relationships between employer and employee, enable faster recovery when a health crisis strikes. The program can keep Australians employed during this COVID-19. JobKeeper subsidize the qualifying employers who continue to pay the wages of eligible employees during the job keeper periods. By implementing this program on June 2020, Australia's economy officially above pre-pandemic levels. Data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics (ABS) reveals Australia's gross domestic product (GDP) rose 1.8% in the March quarter of 2020.
In Australia, the main cause of inflation is cost-push inflation to an increase in the general price level associated with an increase in the cost of production. Measures of inflation are using the Consumer Price Index, or we call it CPI. The CPI, also called the Cost of Living Index. CPI measures changes within average price of trade goods and services. The rates of inflation are in percentage, and the formula calculated like this. How much the CPI increase for 2021 in Australia? Australia implementing a monetary policy through RBA to raise interest rates much earlier than anticipated. That would have vital consequence for confidence and for home, business and debt, thereby seriously threatening the economic recovery.
The epidemic that hit the world forced the Australian government to respond accordingly. The government needed to implement policy in order to reduce the imbalance between population health, healthcare system capacity, and economic well-being. The government may implement either monetary policy or fiscal policy. Our suggestion for the government implementing a combination of those three policies for sustain the economy. Why? Because any pandemic arising for surrogate virus is territory unknown the policymakers, and there is much uncertainty about the appropriateness of response and outcomes. Without the government giving more support to workers and business, the country economy will be affected, and in turn many jobs will be lost.